I would just like to think that the people at the university are sufficiently fair-minded to want to see any Georgia citizen get the best education possible.
All we have is a federal judge cramming something down our throats.
There are certain Southern traditions.
We favor segregated schools. Why to the University of Georgia rather than to any other school?
We walked through onto the campus the first time under the arch. We were surrounded by students screaming at us.
You've been jeered at.
One person I thought to be a student literally tried to spit on her.
The minute they put them in the dormitories, there would be trouble.
When all of a sudden, a rock came through my window.
You have our shoulders to stand on as you build up yours for the next generation.
The first two black students at the University of Georgia walked onto campus 60 years ago, right where I'm standing now. On January 9th, 1961, Charlene Hunter and Hamilton Holmes' journey began with a court battle, bitter taunts, and even acts of violence. But their steps began a journey towards equal access to education for all. Charlene Hunter and Hamilton Holmes kept walking.
All we have is a federal judge cramming something down our throats, and we don't like it.
That something was this lawsuit, an action brought by two black students who were, quote, qualified in all respects for admission to the University of Georgia, but who, because they are American citizens of Negro descent, may not attend. On January 6, 1961, just a few months after this court action was filed, Judge William Augustus Boodle ruled in favor of Holmes and Hunter.
I think there's 50% of the students on this campus that do not want integration and will not stand for it regardless. There's 25% that favor integration, and the other 25% just stand around and they don't care. I'm not for integration. I'm for segregation, and I will be until I die.
But all the students didn't feel the same way.
How do you feel about a Negro coming to school here?
I think if they're able to pass the requirements, they should be admitted. I believe in the equality of man. I believe that we all should have the right to be educated.
It was that right, that opportunity that inspired Holmes and Hunter to enroll at the university. Whether people supported them.
Do you feel your education would be impaired at all by a Negro attending classes here?
No, I certainly do not.
Or whether they didn't.
They can go to any number of colored universities. We have all sorts of colored universities that were built with what it took to build those universities. They didn't pay the taxes to build them. They'd never be there if it were left up to them themselves to build them.
I think it's obvious. It's the reason they don't pay as much tax is because they don't make as much money.
Well, why don't
and the reason they don't make as much money is they don't have equal opportunity to get the same jobs that you will be able to get. Now, that I think basically that's what they want, to improve their own economic status and their own educational status.
The debates continued, but the two students stayed focused.
You know, although the university and other people tried to say that he and Charlene Hunter were not qualified as students, they obviously both were very bright.
That wasn't enough at first.
The committee is of the opinion that they failed to complete the required procedures and that consequently the university authorities have been in no position to consider their applications. The Committee on Education recommends that they be denied, but without prejudice to the rights of the appellants to renew and pursue their applications.
And pursue them they did. Holmes and Hunter were sponsored by the Atlanta Committee for Cooperative Action, led by black business leader Jesse Hill. The group was instrumental to the year-and-a-half-long legal battle it took to get the two accepted into the university. The author of the book We Shall Not Be Moved, The Desegregation of UGA, Robert Pratt, explains the challenges of the court case.
Part of the legal process that they had to go through, and the many hurdles that they had to overcome, was to cut through this facade that state officials had been erecting for decades And that was the lie that there was no segregation practice at the University of Georgia, despite the fact that no black students had ever been admitted to the University of Georgia.
While waiting almost 2 years for the final verdict, Hunter attended Wayne State University and Holmes went to Morehouse College.
He was playing football there. He had just, pledged Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity the first semester of his sophomore year, and things were great.
But both students still dreamed of going to UGA.
Why the University of Georgia rather than any other school?
I just think that it's the best school in this region that I could go to.
3 days after Judge Boodle's ruling, a swarm of reporters and protesters met the students as they arrived on campus for the first time as UGA students.
When we walked through onto the campus the first time under the arch, we were surrounded by reporters and screaming at us and students screaming at us. But we had our eye on the building that now bears our name. I'm so proud of that. And I know Hamilton would have been and probably is smiling down about that. But it was a feeling of determination that it really didn't matter what else was going on. We had a job to do and we were going to do it.
Former CNN President Tom Johnson remembers reporting that day for the Red and Black campus newspaper.
I heard so many students and others shouting really sort of vile words, very racist words at her. I saw as one, I guess, student, but one person I thought to be a student, literally tried to spit on her. The spit did not hit her. It hit one of the people accompanying her.
One notable escort, Horace Ward.
The thing that stands out as much to me as anything else is the fact that they were accompanied by Horace Ward. Horace Ward had tried in vain for several years to gain admission to the University of Georgia.
Ward was the first African American to apply to UGA. He was rejected from UGA's law school in the early 1950s and went through a 7-year-long legal battle with the institution. He later received a law degree from Northwestern University and said that one of the proudest moments of his life was when he was invited to become a part of Holmes and Hunter's legal team.
He said that when he came to campus on that day with Holmes and Hunter, that after they had completed the registration, some angry white person in the crowd shouted at him a racial epithet and told him to get off this campus and never come back.
The two students stepped onto campus.
Everybody just walked the walk, you know what I mean? And without even considering what in retrospect was potential danger, that just never entered our minds. Ask me why, I can't answer that. But I can tell you definitively that nothing about danger ever entered our minds. It was, let's get this done and get over with and get down here as students.
Hunter and Holmes have both stated they weren't thinking about making history when they entered UGA's admissions office.
What had you in mind, Hamilton, when you entered the school?
Well, our main purpose is to acquire a sound education, and we aren't especially trying to break down any barriers or to make history.
But history it was. Jessie Hill's widow, Azira Hill, remembers her and her husband's work to support Holmes and Hunter.
It was a privilege and an honor, and especially when they were successful and we were able to make a contribution for the betterment of everybody, not just Black people, but everyone.
2 days after she arrived on campus, Charlene Hunter settled into her room in Myers Hall. On January 11th, a rock flew through Hunter's window. White students were rioting outside her dorm. Cheyenne Jones shows us how these white students' violent actions almost ended Holmes and Hunter's dreams of a UGA education.
The 2 or 3 nights that I was on campus initially in the dorm, The girls upstairs had organized, and they used to beat on the floor.
Sounds reverberated in Charlene Hunter's room downstairs, where she was forced to live all alone.
Well, I believe that the girls in the dormitories wouldn't go for it very much, having a colored roommate as one of their roommates. And
How do you yourself feel?
well, I wouldn't myself like it.
But the university required that all female students stay in the dormitories, so Hunter had no choice. And though she didn't have a roommate at the Myers dorm, the disturbances continued.
They must have taken turns because they would beat on the floor into the night, I guess to keep me awake or to disturb me or whatever. But it didn't bother me for some reason.
Still, just the fact that she lived here was enough for some.
Do you think there'd be any trouble if a Negro entered the university?
Well, I do if they were going to put her in the dormitories, but as a day student, to me it wouldn't make any difference. I wouldn't mind going to school with them in the day. But I know the minute they put them in the dormitories, there would be trouble.
And then the trouble came.
Once that brick came through the window, the beating on the floor stopped.
In his book, We Shall Not Be Moved, The Desegregation of the University of Georgia, historian Dr. Robert Pratt describes what happened that night.
The rioters descended upon Center Myers Hall, where Charlene was. The other lights of the other students had been turned off. So the only light that was visible was the one coming from Charlene's window. So she became a very easy target.
Hunter was settled in her room when suddenly she heard a commotion.
Students outside were yelling, and as they had been doing the previous nights. And so I had gotten kind of immune to that. I wasn't really paying much attention to that. When all of a sudden, a rock came through my window.
Former publisher of the Los Angeles Times newspaper and later president of CNN, Tom Johnson, remembers that night. He was a student reporter for the school's red and black newspaper.
Well, the crowd built. There were leaders of the group that were again, very loudly shouting such things as 2468, we ain't going to integrate. There was an anger among most of them. I literally was walking among them, sort of taking notes on it, and I saw when the rock or the brick sort of was hurled at her dormitory.
The rock shattered a window in her room.
When that brick came through my window, it wasn't like, oh dear, what? Oh my God, what? I looked and there was glass on my clothes. That was the first thing I thought about. I thought, what am I going to do with this glass all over my clothes? Not who threw the rock, what's going to happen next. It was like, you're messing up my clothes.
According to a front page editorial from January 11, 1961 of UGA's red and black newspaper, about 1,000 students showed up to riot, making it hard to tell the difference between those who gathered in curiosity and the demonstrators.
I don't see how Mr. Hazelwood could say just a few students were there. Now, I'm not for violence, but the paper says there's just 500 or 1,000 people there the other night. And I know it's more than that. I'd venture to say there was 2,000 or 3,000.
The number may not have been exact, but the editorial laid blame on all who attended.
There were police in the streets. There was tear gas. There were a fire department and fire trucks and fire hoses. I think by most definitions, we would call that something a little more than a disturbance.
Some were found to have pistols in their automobiles when searched at the police station. 6 pistols were found.
Dean William Tate would later meet Hunter at Myers Hall to escort her out of the dorm. He told her the university was suspending her in Hamilton homes from school for their own safety. Some of the other students who lived in Myers Hall were already outside. Hunter remembers they formed a semicircle around her.
One of the girls threw out a quarter that landed in front of me, and she yelled, "Here, Charlene, go upstairs and change my sheets." Ultimately, the police took their time getting there to end the riot, to disperse the rioters. But they did it with tear gas. And so the girls had been told to change their sheets in the event that the gas had gotten in their sheets.
Tate drove Hunter to the home where Holmes lived with a local family. Georgia State Patrol troopers were there and told them they had to go home that night.
Hamilton was insisting on driving his car back to Atlanta that night. And I did not think that was a good idea because, you know, coming through those small towns where the Ku Klux Klan had members and who knows what would have gone on.
State troopers ended up taking the pair back to Atlanta, but the battle wasn't over yet.
We deplore and condemn the incidents of Wednesday night, January the 11th, and regret that officials of the state of Georgia were unable or unwilling to protect the rights and property of the university and its students. We also deplore and condemn the behavior of certain outside elements and those university students who regrettably joined in lawless demonstrations.
Dr. Horace Montgomery, a history professor at the University of Georgia, helped reinstate Hunter and Holmes by starting a petition to bring them back to school.
There were quite a few faculty members on campus who supported Charlene Hunter and Hamilton Holmes. They knew it was the right thing to do. It was time to desegregate.
400 faculty members signed the petition.
Insist that the two suspended students be returned to their classes and all measures necessary to the protection of students and faculty.
There were others who also did more than stand by. Mary Frances Early attended high school with Hunter and Holmes at Atlanta Turner High School. Early was attending the University of Michigan when she saw what happened to her former classmates and decided she would join them.
They were doing something really significant to help in integrating the South and particularly Georgia. And I decided, because I had been studying in the summers at the University of Michigan, and I decided then and there that I was going to enter the University of Georgia, try to help them.
Early went on to integrate the graduate school at the University of Georgia and became the first African American student to graduate from here in 1962. In February of 2020, officials named the Mary Frances Early College of Education after her. Despite the hardships that Hunter and Holmes faced as students at the University of Georgia, today she says she enjoyed her time on campus as a Georgia Bulldog. Charlene Hunter and Tom Johnson began a friendship that has endured 60 years, and like many friendships, has been strengthened by shared memories, both the sweet and the bitter.
It was a very tragic time. And to see students behave as they did toward another student was something that I regretted, still do.
Cheyenne Jones reporting. Hamilton Holmes, Charlene Hunter Galt, and Mary Frances Early broke barriers at UGA. In the years after these three trailblazers graduated, they continued to break barriers in their careers. Jessica Green tells us about their lives after UGA.
Dr. Hamilton Holmes, surgeon. Charlene Hunter Galt, international journalist. Mary Frances Early, the College of Education at UGA bears her name. Enormously successful careers propelled by their experiences. Historically difficult and often lonely experiences at UGA.
But one of the things that he told me that really made a difference in his life is that, and just, think about the impact of this, but he was a student there for 2.5 years, and he didn't make one friend on campus during the entire time he was there.
Holmes knows it wasn't easy for his father.
Can you imagine going to a college and not having one friend that you can say that you made there on campus? That's really tough to have, that kind of situation be a part of your life.
But Holmes says he saw his father use the experience to choose kindness.
He kind of flipped that around to be able to say, well, I want to make sure that, as I interact with people, being a doctor, that I'm as kind as I can be, that I, take care of people, that I develop those friendships and relationships. So, being able to turn a negative into a positive.
After graduating from UGA, Holmes went on to become the first African-American student at Emory University's medical school. Life was different there.
They actually welcomed him with open arms coming to Emory. No issues there at all. He made some great friends while he was there as a student at Emory in the medical school.
Dr. Holmes' relationship with Emory remained strong, despite a busy career that included serving as head orthopedic surgeon at Grady Hospital in Atlanta. He also served Emory Medical School as an associate dean. Later in life, he reconnected with UGA too.
I came to visit the campus, fell in love with the campus, really wanted to go to Georgia myself. And he never said one negative thing about the university to me as I was going through the process.
Holmes Jr. graduated from UGA in 1990. He lost his father 5 years later. Today, the 60th anniversary is a time for him, for all, to remember his father's landmark step as one of the 2 Black students to fight for an education at UGA.
People really feel like that opened up doors for lots of other people, not even just to go to school in Georgia, but just to be able to do other things in Georgia as well, too.
Hamilton Holmes and Charlene Hunter graduated together here at Sanford Stadium in 1963. The Turner High School graduates would soon take on the next chapter of their lives with bachelor's degrees in tow.
Graduation day was very exciting because so many people from Georgia, Atlanta, who had supported us had come down to be with us.
Her next step? From Athens, Georgia to New York City.
I already had a job. I had been in the news, of course, and the editor of the New Yorker, William Shawn, had sent for me to come to New York.
Hunter Galt began as an editorial assistant at the New Yorker and later advanced to positions at the New York Times, NPR, and CNN. Her work earned numerous awards, including 2 Emmys and 2 Peabodys.
A lot of my journalism has been reporting on people in ways that are recognizable to themselves, not as criminals, not as Muhammad Ali's or famous movie stars, but just ordinary people.
But telling those stories didn't come easy.
So I started going out and finding stories. And so the very first one was about this Black teacher who was retiring. And I wrote the story and I turned it in. And when it appeared in the paper, I guess I had written 700 words. It was a paragraph and no picture. And I'm the only Black person there, right? Except for the janitors and stuff. So I went up to the front desk. Now, I went up and I challenged the editor and I called him a racist. I don't know if I used those terms, but I said something to the effect.
That experience helped her grow as a journalist.
But I learned a lesson that you got to learn how to talk to your bosses. That's one. But you also have to be able to call them out when they have not been respectful of the people you're writing about.
Throughout her career, Hunter Galt interviewed high-profile subjects, including Saddam Hussein, and her past influenced her work in post-apartheid South Africa.
In 1985, of course, that history and my own history was in the back of my head because there were, in fact, so many similarities. Even though I have been through and my people have been through our version of apartheid, I was there as a journalist to tell the story of the people who were involved in this system.
Fellow Turner High School alumna Mary Frances Early became the first African-American student to graduate from the University of Georgia. On August 16, 1962, she earned her master's degree in music education.
So I was sort of invisible, but I was so happy because I had achieved my goal. But I thought the battle still is not over. And as I stood in line, I was still being ignored. Nobody spoke to me, no faculty, no students. But I thought, this is the beginning of something big. Because from now on, Blacks will be able to get degrees, and I hope that many will come. I thought this is a watershed moment.
Early returned to UGA in the summer of 1964 and earned her specialist degree, an achievement that she notes as making her the first Black double dog in UGA history as well.
There's my life before UGA, and then there's my life after UGA. I was already teaching.
Early taught music in public schools for over 30 years. She then went on to teach at Morehouse and Spelman and served as the chair of the music department for Clark Atlanta University.
I touched a lot of students' lives, and many of those students are still in touch with me today, and they credit me with having helped them to learn not only just music, but life lessons.
Later in her career, Early became the first Black president of the Georgia Music Educators Association. She also served as a panelist for the National Endowment for the Arts and helped write music textbooks, all roles that would leave a lasting impact on the future of music education.
So I really treasure the education that I got at Georgia, though it wasn't always easy. It opened a lot of other doors beyond Georgia and beyond what I had been doing as a teacher. So yes, I think that the University of Georgia prepared me to be actually a pioneer in many other instances.
After her experiences at UGA and being only on the periphery of life at the university for decades, Early was surprised and honored to have the College of Education named after her.
And when I was there, I could never have dreamt that that would happen because things were so different.
Today, Early challenges the university to continue expanding in its diversity and inclusion efforts to give more students of color life-changing opportunities.
University of Georgia added another layer, another part of my life that I would not have felt complete without had it not happened.
I've been able to do a lot of good things. People seem to feel that I have made a difference in almost everything that I have tried to do.
And so that protected us, that history that we learned, that armor that they outfitted us with at a very young age, just took us through all the challenges that even today helps me keep on keeping on.
Jessica Green, reporting.